Yo, it's Dan Larson for Ghosthack, and because some of you guys asked, I want to talk about leads, pads and basses and how to make them and what differentiates them, so let's jump into it. Right, so in general there is not too much of a difference between a pad or a lead sound or a bass sound, only the frequency and the envelope. So anything can be anything really. So for example, let's say this saw wave, so it can be a bass sound. So if you want to make it a little fatter, just add some distortion. Maybe an OTT. And boom, you have a bass sound that can be used in any EDM song basically. I mean, we heard this a lot in older EDM songs. Or this can be a lead sound really. Just add some reverb. Add a little FM on it for very funky kind of leads. But to make your life easier, click on mono, add some portamento time. And boom, you have a very cool lead sound without the FM. This can easily be a lead sound for any Alan Walker song basically. Or if you want to make it a pad, just make it a little longer. And obviously we need to make it polyphonic. Boom, you have a pad, but basically this is not how I would make pad sounds, bass sounds or lead sounds. So for cool pads, to me honestly, there are three ingredients: voices, noise and filters, and of course the envelope that we already talked about. So let's take this pad sound I made earlier, that sounds like this. So this is what I call a cool pad sound. So let me break down what is happening here. So we have two waveforms, wavetables that are heavily filtered. Let me deactivate all the effects. So we have an electric guitar and an anti-static from the digital. But the main point here is that both of them contains lots of voices, as you can see, 6 voices of unison. But this is not enough because they are too sharp. We barely hear the voices because, you know, everything is too digital. So from a cool pad sound, I expect it to be a lot warmer and with a lot more voices and noises. So like more organic stuff. So that's why I would filter it. Maybe you would say that this is too warm, honestly. Yeah, it's a lot better, but honestly, I still miss something. Let's add a noise on top of it. Now we're talking. We have lots of very cool top ends, so we don't hear that digital buzzing electric sound, but more like a very nice and warm, organic, noisy, voicey kind of very natural sounding stuff. And that is simply made by the noise, the voices, because without the voices in the unison, it is still very digital, and the low pass filter. As a step it forward, I want to add extra voices using a hyperdimension. Let's add a little distortion. This creates even more higher harmonics. An EQ to shape the sound further, adding peaks and notches in the spectrum. And I'm doing the same with the PN filter. So because of the drive, right now we have even more higher harmonics, we have even more organic sounding stuff, a lot warmer because of the slight distortion. Let's add an OTT. And my favorite is the chorus, that again gives a lot more voices. And the last step is the reverb. So this is what I call a cool pad sound, and as you can see, we have some envelopes, really long attack and release time that creates the flowing sound for the pad. Okay, so let's talk about leads. Now, the simplest thing for lead is a Pluck sound, because you can't really use a Pluck for example, a pad sound, but you can still use it for a bass if you put it a lot lower into the bass frequencies. But in general, I would say that this is a cool lead sound. Although it is very, very simple, you can still play it as a chord. But to make it a lead, just click on mono, add some legato to it, or sorry, portamento. You can easily use it as a lead because you can hear how it bends from note to note. And this is what differentiates it from like a bass sound or a pad sound. So the way I made this sound is I took basically again a saw wave, like a filtered kind of saw wave, and I added some voices using the all pass filter. Let's deactivate all the other effects. So it makes the sound a little furrier. I would say it's a little more distorted kind of sound. Now what is more important to me honestly is adding some little chaos into the sound using LE41, and it is modulating the master tune, so you can see that it is barely moving it, but still you can hear how it wobbles. It's not that digital. And basically we are almost done, but I wanted to add a little more voices to it to make it even furrier. A little more EQ on the tops and cut the lows to make it a little pluckier using a low pass filter, a compressor, so this makes it sound a lot fatter, and the reverb to the end. And I love how the portamento bends the sound all the time. So this is the stuff that really makes any wavetable into a lead sound. So let's find a different one. So let's start, for example, with the cream. It's a little harsher, but still you can use it as a lead. And if you want to make it a little harsher, let's add some FM to it, like funky lead. Now the interesting part here is that we can go really low to the bass frequency, but it still doesn't sound like a bass sound simply because of how we processed it. So let's go to the basses and find out how to make basses instead of leads. This can easily be a cool bass sound. A simple saw wave filtered. Even I can add some movement on the filter. Especially with some drive. And an OTT. But to me, honestly, this is not really a bass sound because it is too simple. So let's go and find a different waveform. Like, let's use the icon has kick. It's very, very cool because to me, honestly, a good bass sound looks like this wavetable. So we have some higher frequencies at the starting position of the wavetable, and then it fades out into something simpler with lot less higher overtones. So this is why I prefer this sound. And somehow it instantly sounds like a bass sound. I can add the sub oscillator if you want to make it really subby for any bass heavy music, and we can still distort it. But I want to filter it after it, so we don't want to have a very heavily distorted kind of sound. And the filter to make the whole sound a lot duller. Now for cool, very cool bass sounds, somehow bandpass filters work a lot better. So let's choose a bandpass filter, band 24, and play around between 100 and 200 Hz, you know, the mid-bass area. For some reason, this works a lot better than like low pass filters. You can go with low pass filter too, of course. And from this point, it just won't be able to work as a lead sound because you can clearly hear how the low end is dominant even on higher frequencies too. So I'm going really high. It sounds almost like a sine wave. And it is. You can play around with the wavetable position to make it really interesting and moving. I'm adding a lot more low frequencies. And if you are after heavy basses, just open up the low pass filter at the end. So as you can hear how aggressive it is on the low end, the mids are mainly empty. For bass sounds, this is a general rule. You don't want to have too much mid frequencies. And if you want to play it higher, it will just sound stupid, simply because of the frequency range is very heavily low frequency dominant, the mid is empty, and the highs are very shy. Right, so I hope you learned a lot. Don't forget to subscribe and check Ghosthack specs somewhere here in the descriptions, and see you guys next time. Peace.